My night shift at the old textile museum was usually a breeze. 10 hours of blissful silence, just me, my thermos of coffee, and the gentle hum of the building's ancient HVAC system. The place was massive, a labyrinth of echoing halls and cavernous rooms filled with looms and mannequins draped in fabrics from a bygone era. I'd been doing this for 6 months, and the creepiest thing I'd ever encountered was a spider the size of my thumb. That all changed last Tuesday. It started around 2 a.m., the deepest point of the night, when the city outside is finally asleep and the building feels like it's holding its breath. I was doing my usual rounds, my footsteps the only sound in the vast emptiness. When I got back to the security office, I glanced at the bank of monitors, expecting the same static, empty shots of the hallways. But something was wrong. On camera 4, which covered the main corridor on the second floor, a motion alert was blinking. I rewound the footage. At 2:07 a.m., a figure had walked down the hall. It was blurry, indistinct, like a heat haze shimmering off summer asphalt. It moved slowly, almost gliding from one end of the corridor to the other before disappearing out of frame. My heart started pounding against my ribs. I was the only one here. I'd just walked that exact hallway not 10 minutes earlier. It was empty. My first thought was a glitch. An electrical surge, a moth flying too close to the lens, anything. I replayed the footage again, and again. It wasn't a glitch, it was a person. Or the shape of a person. It was tall and slender, and its movements were unnaturally smooth. It didn't seem to have any discernible features, just a dark, humanoid silhouette. A chill, colder than the overactive air conditioning, snaked its way up my spine. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight and my radio, my hand trembling slightly as I clipped it to my belt. "This is Miller," I said into the radio, my voice sounding small in the silent office. "Control, do you copy?" The static hiss was my only reply. The main comms tower was down for maintenance until 6 a.m. I was truly alone. My logical mind screamed at me, "It's a prank, a technical error." But the part of my brain that remembers campfire stories and things that go bump in the night was in full-blown panic mode. Taking a deep breath, I decided I had to go check. It was my job. Leaving the relative safety of the office felt like stepping off a cliff. The air in the hallway seemed thicker, heavier. Every creak of the old floorboards sounded like a footstep behind me. I made my way to the main staircase, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. When I reached the second-floor corridor, it was just as I'd left it. Empty and still. The mannequins in the adjacent exhibits stood like silent sentinels, their painted eyes seeming to follow me. I walked the length of the hall, my light probing every shadow, every corner. Nothing. Not a single thing out of place. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It must have been a trick of the light, a fault in the old camera. I felt foolish, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. I started back toward the stairs, feeling a bit more at ease. And then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound from the far end of the hall, where the figure had disappeared. Thump, thump, thump. It was the sound of one of the old hand looms, the ones used for weaving demonstrations, but no one was there to operate it. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The thumping grew louder, more insistent. My flashlight beam shook as I aimed it toward the sound. The loom was moving. Its wooden shuttle was flying back and forth, weaving an invisible thread in the darkness. Thump, 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 thump. It was impossible. These machines needed a person to operate the pedals to guide the shuttle. I stood there, paralyzed by a mixture of terror and disbelief. Then, the motion stopped as abruptly as it had begun. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. It was heavy, expectant. And in that silence, I saw it. Standing next to the loom, barely visible in the gloom, was the shadow. It wasn't a trick of the light this time. It was darker than the surrounding darkness. A void in the shape of a man. It had no face, no features, but I could feel it looking at me. It felt ancient and full of sorrow. I didn't scream, I didn't even breathe. My legs finally unglued themselves from the floor and I ran. I didn't look back. I sprinted down the stairs, not caring how much noise I made. I burst into the security office, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the keypad. I stared at the monitor for camera 4. The hallway was empty. The loom was still. It was as if nothing had happened, but I knew what I saw. I spent the rest of my shift huddled in that chair, watching the screens, my coffee forgotten. Every flicker of static, every shadow made me jump. I replayed the initial footage over and over. The gliding figure, the motion alert. It was real. When my replacement arrived at 6 a.m., he took one look at my pale, haggard face and asked if I was okay. I just shook my head, unable to form the words. I quit that day. I couldn't explain what happened in a way that would make sense. A glitch in the camera, a sound I imagined, a shadow in a dark hall. But I know what I saw. Some nights when I close my eyes, I can still hear the rhythmic thumping of that loom, and I can see that tall, dark figure standing in the shadows, waiting. They say the old mill had its share of tragedies, workers caught in the machinery. I think one of them never clocked out. Thanks for sticking with me through that story. Sometimes the most terrifying things aren't the ones that jump out at you, but the ones that linger in the shadows just out of sight. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the dark. Stay safe out there and always check your security cameras. You never know what you might see.